Today is July 8th, 2025, and this is episode 313 of the Defensive Security Podcast. Hey, that was a pretty cool zip code, wasn't it? Or area code, wasn't it? Yeah.
It really was.
Not zip code.
Back in the old days.
Yeah. Of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today is Mr. Andrew Callett.
Good afternoon, evening, as it may be. Sir, how are you?
I am better today. How are you?
I'm good. And for those, without dwelling on it, those who don't know, one of our little feline friends, unfortunately, Jerry had to say goodbye to, which was devastating for everybody. So we're not going to dwell on it. But if we're a little more dour today, we're dealing with some grief, and one of our favorite friends, Thor, had to say goodbye. So, but let's not dwell. So, but
he's moved on. So that was certainly sad, but we're here to talk about security stuff.
We are.
And before we go any further, I do want to say that the thoughts and opinions we express on the show are ours and not those of our employers. I, by the way, am still in the market for an employer. So if you meet that specification, let me know.
Hey, maybe we could come as a package deal.
There you go. 2 for 1.
We're also available for kids' birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, christenings.
I got to learn how to do the balloon animals, though.
So, speaking of the 313, you and I both grew up in the 313 area code, or back in the day. And my last apartment in the Detroit area was on the storied 8 Mile.
Hey, that's
but nowhere near the exciting parts of town. I was far to the west of Detroit in a very, very nice, safe part of town. So I could say I lived at 8 Mile in the suburbs. So not the same. I was a poser.
That's quite the story. I did work for quite some time in right on the south side of Detroit, and that was an experience. So
it's true. We saw some things.
Oh yeah,
but that's neither here.
Oh, yeah. So I am. I do not have my sincere apologies because life is currently happening. I do not have a new vendors or commercial spot for us to listen to. But I do want to say thank you to our Patreon donors, and as a reminder, we are providing some additional exclusive content for our Patreon donors. So if you would like access to that, you can donate on our Patreon site. I almost fell back to bad habits there. It's patreon.com/defensivesec. If you sign up as a donor, you can get access to the additional stories that we'll be talking about. So we will, right now we're splitting this up, 3 stories that we provide with free access to, and then 2 more for our Patreon donors. And we are also, by the way, exploring a third option, or another option, which we will provide early access to the shows. So that's something that we will be experimenting on in the coming weeks. The other news I wanted to make everybody aware about it's not ready yet, so don't go all crazy. I am reinvigorating, redesigning, reworking the Defensive Sec merchandise store. So
we're gonna have swag. We're gonna have swag again.
You'll be able to order like trivet, coffee table coasters and stuff like that with our logo on it. It's gonna be
wow.
Gonna be amazing.
So does that mean there's going to be like a box of like 5,000 sitting in your garage, just waiting for the one order we
No,
get?
no, no, no. I'm not doing that. It's made to order, drop shipped.
That's fair.
So, and we will have additional. We do currently have some merchandise for sale, and it's not very good. This new site or new service I'm using will be, I think, much better and have a lot more options in terms of sizing and whatnot. So, uh, for those of you who have purchased stuff in the past, thank you very much, and you'll have a whole new set of stuff. And I have been actually side point. I've actually been thinking about how to kind of cross the streams, as it were, with some of the photography crap that I do, and providing some additional options for people to purchase that has, maybe some of my artwork injected in there. See how that goes.
That do I still get half?
Yeah, yeah, the bad
All right.
half, but yes.
I knew I got to update our contracts. Man,
The bad half. All right. Anyway, just a little value add there. So, with that, we are going to move on to our first story, which comes from CSO Online, and the title here is Top Red Teamer in the U.S. is an AI bot. This story has been making the rounds in the security community for a little while now. There's a company called Expo, and they have a AI bot also named Expo, which has been kind of dominating the leaderboards on HackerOne. So HackerOne, for those of you who are not aware, is a bug bounty company where their customers sign up, and HackerOne facilitates security researchers and bug hunters to report, find and responsibly report any findings. And so this AI bot has been quite busy and apparently has discovered more, at least at the time of this article's writing, over 1,000 vulnerabilities. And that puts it over, basically every other human-based, carbon-based bug hunter. So interesting. There's a lot of discussion about, well, what does this mean, for the security field and for AI? And, I think it's important to put a little bit of context around this. Save one, all of the vulnerabilities that's found are known things. So I don't want to oversimplify it or undersell it, but it sounds a lot like some automation and targeting wrapped around a vulnerability scanner. Now, that might be
well,
unfair.
I think in my mind, it competes in the space for dynamic application security testing tools, and
Fair.
I think I see it as an evolution of that, and I see it actually as probably a big improvement over a lot of DAST tools that I've used in the past. To be fair, I haven't tried them lately, but where I've often seen DAST tools struggle is if the vulnerabilities are more around deep business logic in an application as opposed to just like a cross-site scripting or an injection
Mm-hmm.
prompt injection, sort of, very rote, easy to test. So what I like about something like this is that it seems to take, if I'm thinking of this correctly, it takes the concept of a dynamic scanner, which could potentially be running all the time against your target application, and iterating with a lot more interesting tests and a lot more evolving tests and nuanced testing than you get off a typical dynamic scanner.
That's that's probably fair characterization. And I'm sure, I'm sure that assuming it is as build, having an AI component to it probably gives it some ability to understand, what it's looking at, and therefore,
Mm-hmm.
this is a WordPress site, and I should go look over here, or it's that sort of thing. Or I see evidence that this site is running Tomcat. I should really look for a deserialization bug. That,
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things, which might not be obvious to just a blind or dumb vulnerability scanner. So that's probably a good point.
I don't know. I'm curious. Like, I like the concept. It's something that in my own day job is applicable. I'm not saying I am talking about my. I'm not. I don't want to reveal any secrets about my day job, but um, it's intriguing, and I do wonder if this is sort of the first step of an evolution of what these dynamic scanners are going to turn into. Uh, the other thing this article talks about too, while I've stolen the soapbox for a moment, is that this shows how bad guys can iterate faster and do more. Well, yeah, but so can the blue teamers, right? They could use tools like this. Hopefully, these tools will stay up with the latest techniques and the latest evolutions. And this might become a table stakes kind of thing to have if you're a software house or you've got web apps or whatever that you're presenting to the world. You may have to do this, and that may take the place in my mind of a lot of the annual pen testing. Like if I can use this as an ongoing angelic AI pen tester that's constantly just assessing my environment for the same price of an annual pen test. I don't know what the pricing is. I'm making an assumption there. What I like about that and what I dislike about annual pen tests is they're nice for that point in time review, but your environment evolves all the time. It changes all the time. So as soon as something changes, it could be a material change that's changed the state of what a pen test would have found. The concept that I like about this is I've got a 24/7 automated tool constantly crawling the environment, looking for changes or weaknesses or problems that, in theory, it's learning and adapting and evolving like a Terminator and finding things that I need to know about more often and more quickly than annual pen test or that sort of typical approach would take. So, I don't want to over lean into the marketing, but this feels like a really cool, helpful use of AI for us defenders.
Definitely so. I mean, I think to your point, it provides an opportunity, assuming this is eventually productized, which I'm assuming it will be. It provides an opportunity to do kind of ongoing, continuous penetration tests. But I kind of go back to all but one of the vulnerabilities that it found are known, right? So it's not innovating necessarily. It does say that they found a previously unknown vulnerability in a Palo Alto VPN software, but beyond that, it's it's looking for the existence, and perhaps in much more intelligent ways and scalable ways, but it's looking for known vulnerabilities, and that I think perhaps a lot of human bug hunters do the same thing, but I think that there are quite a few who are also looking for more of the kind of the 0 day. That's where I think the sexiness and the flash is for bug hunters, right? I mean, I run a whole fleet of websites, and I get people all the time. We call them beg bounties, right? Like we noticed that you don't have a security.txt. I expect to get $100 check or whatever.
At least, and maybe 2 gift cards.
That's right. What I found perhaps more interesting, and this I think is goes along with something you talked about with regard to the bad guys and how this is perhaps going to be the mode of operation going forward. The second half of the article talks about the metrics. So they found a little over 1,000 vulnerabilities, which were then reported through the HackerOne program, and quite a few of them are not fixed. Like they say, 45% of the vulnerabilities found are awaiting resolution, and even the ones in the other 55% are in various stages, like they've been accepted and they're working through the organization's process to fix. And I think this highlights a problem. Like, companies have a finite capacity for vulnerability remediation. And so this is a new fire hose that you can shoot at your vulnerability remediation team. And I use that term, broadly, because that can cover people, everybody from patch management to sysadmins who are responsible for making config changes to developers who have to make code changes. And I think that's going to quickly become, and we're already seeing it manifest itself in this article, that's going to be the bottleneck here. Is like, we can tell you, like even if we were able to give you perfect clarity into every vulnerability you have, it doesn't mean that you can fix them. Obviously, you have to go through a process of prioritizing them. But one of the things I worry about is, like, I have this mental picture of the I Love Lucy skit where the chocolates are coming off the conveyor belt and they're just coming at you faster than you can possibly handle. And I think that's been a challenge, writ large for IT. But this, I think, takes it to a new level, because now you've got stuff that is being seen as exploitable from the vantage point of someone on the outside, and therefore it's kind of got a higher, its urgency is a little higher. I don't know if I said that
So,
well.
no, you did. I think so. I certainly classify proven vulnerabilities as higher criticality in my environment. But hear me out. So you've got AI finding vulnerabilities. Clearly, we just need to have AI fixing the vulnerabilities, and they could just fight it out.
Well, that was exactly where my mind was going. Like, well, where's the blue team AI, right? Where's the
Oh, they exist, man. I mean, that's what a lot of like Copilot and Cursor and other stuff are trying to do right now. I don't know how effective they're going to be yet, but
Well, I
it would
heard
be.
that the Gemini, actually, there's a command line version of Gemini now for Linux, and so, like, you could just, theoretically, you could pipe the output of your HackerOne results, just pipe that straight into Gemini, and then pipe the output of Gemini into, like, Bash to fix all. And it, like, if that was on your, like, Ansible system or whatever, like, I mean, sky's the limit.
Well, I will tell you, being a Gemini since I was born in June, I don't trust it. Maybe try a Virgo or a
I knew
Pisces.
I was skeptical of you for good reason. Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting world, man. I think the way I kind of think about it too, and I mean this respectfully to the engineering teams, but there's a value in loading them up with all these findings to encourage them to also find better ways to deal with them and prompt them to explore new, more scalable ways of fixing vulnerabilities, as
Right.
opposed to like just hand rolling all the fixes, depending on what it is, right? I don't know. But, if we're talking about dependencies and updating dependencies, a lot of that can be automated. But I think a lot of development teams are concerned that they don't know what else will change or what it'll break, and I get that. I also feel like we have to find ways to go faster to keep up with this. And I don't know the answer. I'm not a developer. I'm not a development leader. I just know that you're right. We're getting far more vulnerabilities than the teams can handle the way they've handled it in the past. And if half of the marketing is true, maybe we've got some options to do it differently.
Yeah, I think the net takeaway for me is the the targeting capabilities of adversaries is growing much faster and with much more sophistication than what we have been experiencing on the development IT, corporate IT, and corporate security side.
Yeah.
And that has to change. Those dynamics have to change. And both from not waiting until somebody's AI agent finds the vulnerabilities for you, all the way to we have to find a way to increase the capacity and responsiveness of addressing vulnerabilities when they're discovered, because it's just like the process that we have, or at least that most organizations have today, just aren't going to scale.
I agree. I agree.
Anyway, market opportunity for some creative people there. All right, our next story comes from Dark Reading. I actually think all the rest of them come from Dark Reading now. The title here is "Hackers Impersonate Top Brands in Callback Phishing." I think this is largely a consumer oriented story, just to be very clear. But the net, that said, I think there is a high likelihood that this technique will at some point, if not already, be targeted at organizations. And so I thought it was worth talking about. The way this attack works is it's kind of like a voice based phishing attack, but in reverse. It the attackers send the victim through normal email spoofing or text messages or instant messages. They will represent themselves as some legitimate company like PayPal or Microsoft or DocuSign. And there's been a host of others that have been observed in this particular attack. But what they'll do is they'll send a very legitimate looking document that indicates, kind of like normal phishing works, like you have an urgent problem that has to be fixed. But rather than the normal process of them calling you, the document leaves it up to the victim to call them. And in the document that's provided is a phone number that is not the phone number for the actual company. It's a phone number for a call center that's run by the fraud team, these criminals here. And they're very experienced at kind of doing the high pressure process of separating you from your credit card numbers or your personal information. But it's not hard to see, like, somebody sends out a email purporting to be Broadcom saying that, hey, look, we noticed that you're running patches on your VMware systems and you're not, like, you didn't renew your maintenance, and we're about to come out with some really really big ugly auditor goons, and so you need to give us a call and get this sorted out. So I can see some very clear opportunities for this to be abused in the corporate world. And one of the things that this relies on, and allegedly it is more effective from what this report is saying, is that when you, the victim, are the one that places the call, your guard is a lot lower. Like, your guard is down. You're not as skeptical or cynical as if it were the case if they were to call you. So it is, it's going to very likely be more effective. And so I think this is one of those things, like, there's not a lot you can do from a technological perspective other than the things that you're already doing, like, filtering out spam, doing effective email filtering and whatnot. I think this is perhaps an opportunity for awareness training, because it's a new tactic, right? There's some reports now, and we're going to have a story later in the show about how training is perhaps not as effective as we all think it is. But I think when you have something that is brand new and novel, it's not previously known, it makes sense to make people aware that, hey, look, fraudsters are going to, they're going to try to get you to call them, and just, be aware, apply the same level of skepticism, or like, don't use the number in the document that's sent to you, like go to their website, that sort of thing.
Yeah, though it's interesting. I've seen a similar end result of the scam, similar but started differently, which is kind of to that point. Let's say you go to Google Apple support. What some of the fraudsters have been doing is buying sponsored results at the top of Google for
Right.
Apple support. So their sponsored malware, basically not malware, but their fake phone number shows up at the top of the Google ratings, and people trust that too. And then they call it and they answer as Apple support, and they're obviously not, and then they run their script. But same psychological impact of you trust it because you're the one placing the call. So
Right.
it's an interesting problem. Like, what do you believe? Let's say, in the age of AI answers too, it's even more abstracted. I ask AI, hey, what's the number for Apple support? And if it's badly primed in some malicious way, I don't even have the option of seeing all other results or how it's ranked in the settings or what web page it came from sometimes. So it's interesting. It's going to get uglier. And then you start pairing this with being able to do easy deepfakes for audio. It's going to get ugly.
There was a news story. We don't have it part of our collection today, about how more and more people are using AI as a search engine, right? So they're using, rather than like going to the Google search bar, they're logging into ChatGPT, and they're asking their question to ChatGPT. And some fraudsters have realized that, if you, for example, a very simplistic example, say, what is the website address for Microsoft? It is, the chatbots in some instances are hallucinating the wrong address. They're providing the wrong address back. And as far as I can tell, that wrong response is consistent. So the bad guys are asking questions of the chatbots, like, what website is Microsoft, and it comes back with some badly formed URL, and then they go and register that, and so um, it's an interesting take on that, and I don't know if there's opportunities to like proactively poison the results. I think that's probably coming, but minimally, we're already seeing problems arising from the use of AI as a search engine.
Yep. I think these are somewhat growing pains. I do think AI will be helpful overall, but we're going to
Yeah,
find all sorts of new and intriguing ways to abuse it, just like we did when we started up doing things on the internet and moved to cloud providers or wherever else. It's going to be a very target rich environment for the next couple of years, though. I really do think the bad guys are going to have a heck of an advantage as we've opened up this massive new attack surface, and we're going to have to figure out how to defend it.
well, hell, I mean, search engines have been around for 30 years now, and like, you just walk through a scenario where people are still getting scammed because the fraudsters are, they know how to get there, either through buying ad placement or through search engine optimization attacks. They know how to game the search engines, and that's been around for 30 years. So I think it's
Right.
naive to think that we're not going to have similar kinds of problems with these AI tools. And I'm going to guess that there'll be, some of them will be long running too.
Yeah, I think it's just accelerated. I think the
Yeah.
rush to use it is going to exaggerate the problem for a little while or make
Hmm.
it. I mean, the upside is anything that goes bump in the night with AI gets massive press coverage. So the companies are highly incentivized to fix it quickly.
True.
And there's so
It's
much
true.
money flying around. I, I, I'm looking forward to the Gartner Trough of Disillusionment as we enter it and see how that goes.
Yeah, I saw Nvidia is up at like $3 or $4 trillion market. It's just absolutely bonkers.
It's a trillion here, trillion there. Starts to be real money.
Getting there. All right, our next story also comes from Dark Reading, and the title here is Initial Access Broker Self Patches 0 Days as Turf Control. I anybody I think that's been in the incident response field for a while has seen this. So it's not necessarily completely new, but I think what is new, at least as reported in this article, is that we're seeing access brokers, so more commodity adversaries actually taking advantage of this tactic. And just to be very clear what it is, the adversary here, it's an initial access broker, which means their job is to penetrate a system or a network, establish some sort of backdoor, some sort of ongoing communication, and then they sell that access on the market. And they sell it to basically whoever wants to buy it, and they sell it on different metrics, like how big is the system that they have access to, what company is it associated with, like there's lots of different metrics that that different potential buyers might care about, and that could drive the price up or down. What's happening now here is they're pointing out an example of an access broker who compromised some anonymous, undescribed entities through, of course, Ivanti, because what else would you use? At the time, these apparently were 0-day vulnerabilities. When the adversary here was exploiting these Ivanti Connect secure vulnerabilities, but once they were in, they had a level of sophistication sufficient enough to close the vulnerability to the point where it couldn't be exploited again by another party. And that's interesting because at that point it was a 0 day. So like it wasn't like the hackers here just went and downloaded the patch and applied the patch. Like they actually had to figure out how to mitigate the vulnerability. Now the details of that are not laid out in this article, but it does demonstrate some level of sophistication. And ANSI, which is it's ANSSI, that's the French, like the French version of CISA in the U.S. They talk about how on the one hand this particular threat actor, initial access broker, is sophisticated enough to be able to not only have access to 0-day vulnerabilities to exploit, but the level of sophistication required to patch them to some extent. They're not apparently fully patched, but then they're also using kind of like duct tape together attack infrastructure. So
right.
So, although I will say, this kind of comes back to the whole discussion around the reasonableness of attribution, right? And I would say just because an organization uses, like commercial or residential VPN services and, hacked home computers to serve as their attack platform, I don't know that is an indication that they're unsophisticated. I think it might mean that they are, like that's their MO. Like that's how they have chosen to operate. And I'm sure that was an intentional, somebody who is sophisticated enough to be able to leverage 0-day vulnerabilities and patch them behind, once they're in, I've got to believe is making some choices about how they're, where they're attacking from somewhat deliberately. I think it's bad to assign too much weight onto, attribute too much importance to the quality of the infrastructure that they're using. So
Sure. I mean, bad actors have to be as sophisticated as they need to be to achieve their goals.
Yes.
And it's interesting too to see how many 0 days get burned more often these days. Days gone past, 0 days were a lot rarer, and they were, you burn them, you lose them. We've kind of gotten past that in many ways. There's so many 0 days kind of appear, seemingly floating around these days. So I don't know. I don't put a lot of stock in trying to ascertain full levels of sophistication based on single data points like this, because I think a lot of very sophisticated actors can choose to go up and down the sophistication ladder as they see fit for whatever their goals are.
Right.
So
Now,
the other thing
as to the, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The other thing I was going to say is that, and you alluded to this being, this is not that new. 20 years ago, we saw hackers playing King of the Hill on servers they'd break into, get into a Linux server or whatnot and try to maintain persistence and kick out other hackers and, patch things. So maybe it fell out of favor for a while. It's just coming back around again. But I read this. I was like, yeah, this is not that new, but maybe it's just been rare lately. And it's just starting to happen again. I don't know.
Well, I think what's novel here, certainly the concept of closing the door behind you as an attacker is not new. I mean, I throughout my entire career, I've seen. I mean, I cannot tell you how many incidents I've worked on where there's been many different actors.
What? Why can't you tell me? Is it classified? Do you not remember? Why?
I'm old. I don't remember them all. There's a bunch.
Right. That's fine.
They go back a long time. And like you described it with King of the Hill, like, somebody would hack in, and then somebody would hack in behind them, and they would delete that first person's account and, change the password, and then somebody else will come along and pick them out. And it made it really difficult as an incident responder to figure out what happened, because you had so many artifacts. The timelines didn't make any sense. But what's novel here, I think, is the 0-day aspect. That they are not only exploiting 0 days, but they're actually closing. They're remediating the 0-day. They're remediating a not yet patched vulnerability.
Yeah, with their own kludged together patch, just enough to close it out.
Right.
Look, they're doing a service. They're helping.
Which makes me
wonder. Look for the helpers. Sorry, go ahead.
There you go. Look for the helpers. It makes me wonder, if it's described in the article here, they're not fully remediating the vulnerability. They're just doing enough so that it's not exploitable. And that makes me wonder.
Breaking it for future patching or whatnot. It's probably.
Yeah, well, that exactly. That's where I'm going.
Sorry.
So point number one was, what kinds of system instability? I mean, are they testing their code? Are they they have some kind of QA process to make sure that their 0-day fix isn't going to introduce something?
That's a brilliant idea. I don't need my own QA and test environment. I just need to hack into somebody else's prod environment and test there.
There you go.
Their uptime is not my SLA.
Even better if it's a competitor. So, and then the other is, what does it look like from the perspective of a vulnerability scan?
Oh yeah, good point. How is it fingerprinting whether or not the patch is applied, not applied? Right. I guess it depends on the logic of how it's assessing it.
Right. So, I mean, at some point, this 0-day is no longer a 0-day. These Avante Connect secure vulnerabilities were eventually disclosed and patched. And so when you are, and this, by the way, is not discussed in the article, it's just something that's banging around in my mind. So you are a customer who has these things installed in your environment, and you go and you scan your environment to make sure that you've got them all. Do you see, as showing as vulnerable, do you see the ones that were, quote, patched by the attacker? I don't know.
I'm going to guess, unless they happen to perfectly increment the version ID to happen to match the patch that hasn't been released yet, more than likely your scanner is going to pick up that it's not. I don't. Man, it really depends on the logic of the scanner. But that's an interesting problem. I don't know. I let's just not do it. Let's just not let this happen. How's that sound? Just don't, Jerry. Just don't.
Yeah, there. But so to go off on another tangent, a little bit of advice from Jerry. I feel like I need to have like a little, fireplace setting to take you all over to.
Little bumper music that comes into now. Advice from Jerry.
There are certain types of vulnerabilities, and I would put almost anything from Avante into the bucket, but also things like Palo Alto and FortiGate and some others, where when they're disclosed, you should really think long and hard about whether that needs to be treated as an incident, whether or not you have any indication that they've been exploited. If you have a 0-day vulnerability from something like Avante or some of the others that I just mentioned, we know from a lot of painful history that they are often exploited as a 0-day. Now, obviously, you have to apply some logic behind how, because you can't investigate everything. I get it, but there are instances, I think, where and this is how I approached things when I was important. Is when a vulnerability that is, especially those that are internet facing, crosses a certain threshold, and it was a 0-day for some period of time, and there's any indication that it was being exploited in the wild, that gets investigated as an incident. Like you look for artifacts. You don't assume that it wasn't hurt before you patched it. So yeah, you patched it and then you move on. But in this instance, if you patched it and then moved on, the adversary here, the initial access broker, already has an alternative means to access your system, which still exists after
patching
you apply
doesn't
the patch.
evict. Right. Patching it doesn't evict them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's usually what the first thing to do is drop some sort of other method, some other backdoor, some other method to retain persistence.
Mm-hmm.
So, burn it to the ground.
Burn it to the ground. So anyhow, any more to say on this one?
No, it's interesting. But look, no. I thought I had
all
something,
right,
but I don't.
So we're gonna say goodbye to the free listeners, and so we'll let you know that you can find links to the stories we talked about on our website at defensivesecurity.org. Just look for episode 313. And for those of you who are Patreon donors, we will have a couple more stories coming up for you. So in the meantime, where can people find you on social media? Should they want to find
at
you?
Lerg, L-E-R-G on both X and your fine Mastodon server, Infosec.exchange.
Awesome. You can find me on Mastodon. It's at Jerry at infosec.exchange. And I'll also drop, by the way, a link to the Patreon sponsorship if you so choose. You want to get access to that juicy extra content, which I hope you do, and I hope those of you who sign up for it are finding it valuable. But with that, we'll talk to those of you next week. And